Hello.
You made it. I'm opening up the chat as we speak. So for those of you who are entering right now, you are good to go. But please do jump in the chat. Let us know how things are going. If you're brand new, let us know who you are and where you're coming from, because that's always a good thing for us to know. But this is week 2 of, what do we call this? CPT Bootcamp. It's week 2 of your bootcamp, and we get to do a little bit more of a dive into some more information that I think is really relevant and really useful as far as making your programs. And then hopefully last week was very helpful. Hopefully you were able to pick up on some of the language, start practicing with it. Maybe you're walking around the house saying, hey, I'm walking anteriorly right now. I mean, who knows? Who knows? Maybe you're using all the fun language that you've learned so far. But yeah, again, we get to do a deep dive and do a little bit more about setting your study schedule. But then we're going to talk about energy systems, which is a big, big deal. Isn't that right, Jenny?
Absolutely. The energy systems, hopefully we can help make this a lot more understandable for you guys, because some of you might be your first time looking at the energy systems or trying to understand it. But the most important takeaways will really point those out. Like, we train the energy systems when we exercise. So that's why we need to know them. But we'll spend a decent amount of time today going over that. And of course, questions are welcome. I do have our spreadsheet open for office hours. So any questions that we don't get to today, I'll make sure that we cover on Friday as well. So we're ready to go.
All right, we're jumping in. Let's do this.
All
right. So here we are, week 2, setting your study schedule and mastering the energy systems. Again, the energy systems, we're going to spend plenty of time on it. So be locked in for that part. Definitely. I mean, be locked in for everything, but the energy systems part, definitely be locked in for that. Your hosts, nothing's changed here. It's still me. It's still Jenny. It's still the same people. Hopefully, teaching you a thing or two, maybe a little bit of entertainment as well. But we're hoping that at the very least, we help you to do better on the quizzes and tests. But probably, and more importantly, take the information and it starts to become really relevant and practical for you to use for yourself and for your clients in the future. So every week we're going to have a kind of a but first before we get into the information. I just want to give you guys a couple of reminders here before we dive into some of this information. The online exams, we did talk about this quite a bit last week, the 2 different exams. So hopefully a lot of that sank in, but please feel free to ask questions if you got them. The online exams are untimed and open book with unlimited access. So that's kind of a big deal. That's a big differentiator between the 2. The at-home online exam, untimed, open book, open note, unlimited access. The accredited exam, and by accredited, we mean the testing process is accredited. The accredited exam is proctored, and this is probably in a testing center, but probably in a testing center, but also there are opportunities for virtual proctors. But in either case, there's someone watching you. It's just you versus the test. No notes, no book. There's a time limit. There's going to be 2-hour time limit. So again, it's kind of like how you might remember taking tests in school and in high school or college, where it's just you versus the test. And the big differentiator there, we'll cover this a lot over the next few weeks, is oftentimes employers of personal trainers are going to be looking for the accredited exam. The good news for all of you is you can take both. You have access to both as part of being in this course. The fast track for some of you is available in your student portal. We'll talk about it a little bit more as we go forward, but just know that that is an option for you guys. And then student support can be reached. We got the phone number. We've got the email address for you. It's something that we'll repeat several times, but just take note of this. Take note of that phone number. Take note of that email address, because they are going to be useful for you. You're not going to be able to reach me and Jenny 24 hours a day, but you can get messages to them all the time, and they will get back to you as soon as they can. All right, let's talk about staying motivated. An hour of planning can save you 10 hours of doing. And failing to plan is planning to fail. So this is one of those things. You hear it, people say it. These are like motivational things people put on Instagram. But when you actually do it, when you actually live it, you start to see the experience, and then you start to value a little bit of planning. You start to value scheduling your life and scheduling your professional life and your personal life so that you can actually get to everything that you want to get to. It's always nice to think, boy, this week I want to do this, and this. If you got a lot of things on your plate, it's going to make sense to make a plan in order to be able to get to everything and get to everything well. Especially you're studying, and planning time to study is a big, big deal. Something we'll talk about a little bit more here in a few minutes. This also applies to the job of being a personal trainer in itself. You are going to be planning quite a schedule for yourself when you get really busy as a trainer. And you might be the type of trainer, if you're like myself and like how Jenny was, sometimes I got one-on-one clients, group classes, small group training, maybe a little bit of admin stuff. So you want to be able to plan for all that stuff on top of doing all your personal stuff, getting all your homework or getting your own workouts in, maybe your homework, a little study time. All of that is very important. And then think about it this way too. You're kind of going to be helping your clients to be better at planning their lives. Lots of times people are going to say, oh man, I don't have time to prepare food or fit in these workouts or whatever. And you are going to be helping them to make a plan in order to better their life. So if we're going to be helping other people to do this, it's something that you want to be able to do for yourself as well. So as far as choosing your speed for your studies, there's a couple of ways you can go about it, at least a couple of ways that we came up with. We got the sprinter and we got the marathoner. Sprinter, more or less 2 chapters a week. A marathoner, more or less 1 chapter a week. The way I would look at it is you probably want to take things more slowly if the information is newer to you. If you want to go into a little bit more detail with information, maybe it just takes you a minute for the information to sink in. Maybe you need to apply some of it, do the quizzes, watch all the videos before it really sinks in. The important part is that it does sink in. Whether it sinks in 5 minutes or 5 hours, the important part is that it sinks in. So if you need to take your time, take your time. Now, sprinter, you may be able to get you the information a little bit more quickly. Maybe you are acquainted with some of this information. Maybe it's not brand new to you. And maybe you're just trying to get this done, get out of here, get a job, and start working. So, in either case, both of them, you can be successful. We just think, know yourself and know which is the best way for you to go about doing your studies. A little bit on guided study. Where do you find it? When you log into your course, it's along the left-hand side. It's one of the top ones that you're going to pick. You're going to pick guided study, and that's where we've put together basically 10 modules, and we've scheduled it to take 10 weeks. You can take as long as you want, actually, but we've scheduled it to be 10 modules in 10 weeks. Each module has reading. It has videos. A lot of those videos are myself and Jenny. We've got a couple other people in there as well. There are going to be quizzes that help you to test whether or not the information sunk in. These quizzes are study tools. They're not a way to get points in order to accumulate for a grade. That's not how this course works. This is a course in which you are taking these quizzes to test whether or not you understood the information. And if you don't do well on the quiz, good. That means go back, restudy the information until you do get quizzes. That's a good sign. You're going to be looking pretty good for the final exam. And why do we make it just to kind of organize this course for you and put together some other relevant pieces of information? I think those videos can be very useful for some of you in understanding some of the information. So please be sure to go ahead and utilize them. And then how to use it. Like I said, I just gave you a few examples. Let me give you a couple more here. Make sure to come to Bootcamp or watch these recorded webinars, preview or review the recommended reading. So if you got a couple of chapters, check it out. Questions in office hours or questions here in Bootcamp, I think are a great way to help you have that information sink in a little bit more for you. And then take those quizzes. Like I said, those quizzes show you how you're doing. They show you if you're understanding the information. And if you're not understanding, it's a good thing to know, right? It's better for you to know that than not know that and then go take the final exam. So if something doesn't sink in, go back, study it a little bit more, experience it. If you can apply it in your everyday workouts or your everyday life, great. I think that's a great way to have information sink in. Again, they're not a way to accumulate points. They're a way for you to test yourself, and they're a study tool. So make sure to use those quizzes. You can take them as much as you would like. Jenny, did I miss anything as far as all of those study tips?
Nope. There's lots of different resources, guys, but definitely check out that guided study. How many of you guys are actually using guided study? I asked the same in nutrition. It looks like a lot of you guys are. Throw it in the chat for us. How many of you guys are using guided study so far? Sweet. Nice. Good. A lot of you guys, for you guys. Okay. Perfect. Good. Tony's using a mixture of everything. Awesome. Because I'll talk in a second about some of the other resources you guys have access to, just to make sure we're all on the same page. A couple more study tips here for you guys. Just remember, there's 168 hours in a week. That's a lot of hours. Okay. The biggest thing that I want to stress for you guys, how many of you guys are a little bit stressed about studying / taking this test? How many of you guys, be honest, throw it in the chat for me. Sarah, yeah. Okay. Isa said me. Okay. I get it. So some of you guys are a little nervous about it. Okay. For one reason or another, the biggest thing I can tell you guys is learn the way that we're teaching you guys in these boot camps, which is how do I use this information, right? Use it as much as you can. Go out there and use the terminology, do the movements that we're going to be talking about over these next couple of weeks. Don't be scared. Don't be nervous. Okay. Because this test is just step one. You're studying for these courses that you're taking, you guys. It's only going to be a couple months out of your life. And then you have the rest of your life to do this. Okay. So in the grand scheme, this is just a small sliver of time. Does that make sense? So hopefully that helps like ease your fears a little bit. But just remember, we're here to give you guys all the tips and things that you need. All right. One tip that good, a little bit. Okay, good. As long as it helps a little bit, I'll take that. One tip I want to help you guys with as far as studying. So this short period of time that you're going to be studying for these courses and these certification exams, identifying your PEW or your personal Einstein window. This is a thing. All right. This is the time of day when your mind is at its peak. You feel like you work really well. You work really efficiently. You stay awake, right? We all have that time of day where we kind of get a little sleepy. All right. Yes, Dominic, it's all multiple choice for the personal training exam. Yep, you got it. Okay. But this time is different for everyone. Okay. I don't know about you guys. How many of you guys are early morning people? You're at your best, like between 5 a.m. and maybe noon. Couple people. Yeah, a couple of you guys. Awesome. I'm the same way. I'm an early morning person. The earlier, the better. I'm super fresh in the morning. Yep, 5 a.m. Me too, Maria. Some of you guys are probably nighttime people or maybe somewhere in between. Where are my night owls at? My husband's a night owl. He stays up to all hours of the night watching TV. Camelia, it's nice. Nice. Jean. Okay, a couple of you guys are nighttime people. Jacob is both. I love it. Parker said guilty. I love it. All right. So, guys, everybody's different as far as what time of day we feel that we're running at our best mentally and physically. I'll give you a tip though, especially since this is just a short sliver of time that we're going to be studying. For a lot of us, you guys, your best time of day for mental and physical performance is when you exercise. Oh my goodness. Okay. I point that out because you might need to rearrange your schedule a little bit for the couple months that it takes you to study. Okay, just keep that in mind, but study when it's best for your brain. Don't try and study when you're not going to be awake or not focused. Does that make sense? It seems pretty simple. But when you're scheduling your personal Einstein window, make a plan and stick to it. Okay, so if you decide that 5 a.m. to 7 a.m. is when you want to study and you're going to move your workouts to a different time or shorten your workouts or whatever you're going to do, you study at work, nice. Okay, whatever it is that you're going to do, you guys, make a plan and then stick to it. So whether you use the calendar in your phone, I'm a physical calendar kind of person. I have a gigantic desk calendar right here, and you guys probably can't see that, but it's color-coded. It's color-coded based on what I'm doing because I have private clients and I coach volleyball and all these other things. So it's all color-coded, but I keep track of everything that I'm doing. You guys should be doing the same, okay? And then stick to that schedule. And again, this is a short period of time in your life. Once you're done with this certification exam, onward and upward. You can do whatever you need to do with your time at that point. All right. No, Dominic, we can't hear you. Why? Are you saying bad things over there? Are you yelling at me over there? We can't see you either. Oh, your dog? Nope. We can't see or hear you guys. Good question. All right. Now, another resource, you guys. Yes, all of these meetings are recorded, guys. I'll point that out again in a second here. So remember that educational support is available to help you guys. Okay, their phone number and email address is right here on this slide, but it's also all over in your website. It's all over on our website, and it's all over the internet. It's not hard to find, you guys. You can also reach them. A fast way to reach student support if you have questions, you guys, chat. Okay, you can chat when you go to our main website, issaonline.com, and then go to the chat feature in the bottom corner that pops up and make sure to select student support. They'll reach out to you there. Okay, that's a great way to reach out if you have any questions, whether it's about the course, whether it's about questions specifically about what you're learning, whether it's about the exam or anything technical, all of it. You're talking to actual certified professionals that can help you. Okay, so use that resource. And then, of course, you guys find an accountability buddy. We offer a Facebook page. I'll tell you how to get there. Okay, I'll talk you guys through it. Okay, the Facebook page is a great resource. It's made specifically for students and certified professionals with ISSA. It is not open to the public. Okay, it is a private group just for you guys. I'm one of the moderators on there, so I answer a lot of questions on there as well. But if you go to groups, when you're in Facebook, okay, go to groups and then type in ISSA Educational Bootcamp and then hit search and it should pop up. You'll see our little logo. and make sure to answer all the questions that we ask so we can confirm that you're a student. But that is a great place, you guys, to not only get a hold of people like me who can answer your questions as you go through the course, even after boot camp is over, but you can also network and talk to other people that are in the same spot as you. All right. Yes. Lots of different resources for you. You guys made your little group chat last week. I know. So hopefully that's helpful for you guys too. But yeah, do it in our Facebook group too. There's a whole lot more people in there as well. All right. You are not alone as you study and get out into this field. Okay, guys. Couple more slides before we dive into the energy systems, the meat and potatoes, if you will. So I want to point out a couple more things in your websites just to make sure you all know where they are. First and foremost, your textbooks tab. Okay, it sounds like a lot of you guys are using guided study, but the textbooks tab is where you can find the actual physical textbook. Okay, you can find your online searchable version of the textbook there, and you can also find the workbook and study guide. All right. How many of you guys are using the workbook and study guide? And Lincoln, I'll have them post. This was a group, the group chat that they're talking about. These guys made it themselves and shared the link in the chat last week. So whoever was in charge of that, can you guys throw the link in the chat for Lincoln so you can join the group chat? That'd be awesome. Sweet. Awesome. Yes, the books are free, guys. They're in your course in 3 spots: guided study, textbooks tab, and the downloads tab. Absolutely. You don't need to buy a physical textbook. It's included with the course. Parker has the physical book. Awesome. But the workbook is here, you guys. There's 2 versions of the workbook online. One is a printable version. If you just want to print it out and handwrite on it, you can do that. There's also an online fillable workbook. Okay. Now with that one, the trick is you can open it and you can type in it. All right. But you need to download it and save it to your device first before you start typing in it. Because if you just leave it online, if you type in it and close it, it'll delete everything you typed. Does that make sense? Okay, so the fillable workbook is for those of you guys who want to just type on your device into that workbook. You can do that. Just download it to your device first. Okay, yeah, I like the hard copy too, Dominic. I'm a handwriter kind of person. But that's why we give you guys both options. So you have everything that you need. Okay, and then the last piece, guys, of course, the quizzes are split up throughout guided study. But if you want to just access the quizzes or go back and revisit any quizzes, a great place to look is in the quizzes tab in your course. Okay, the quizzes tab has all the quizzes listed in numerical order, and you can see your most recent score for your last attempt on that quiz. You can see if you haven't taken it as well, but you get a chance to go back and review the quiz, or you can take them again from there. All right, so lots of different resources available for you. Let us know if you have any questions. Okay. So let's do this, John. Let's get into some energy systems, the good stuff, if you will. Start us off.
Yeah, this is some of the good stuff. Clearly, I think we all get that activity and exercise requires energy. And what we'll talk about today is the different ways in which we make energy, what we use for energy, and then how that applies to activity and exercise and programming. And then we'll come up with some examples that I think might help it to sink in, because some of it sounds all biochemical and sciencey, which is cool, but we want to make sure that it's relevant information for you guys so that you can walk out of here and feel like you kind of know what to do with this information as opposed to just being able to answer test questions. So we're going to focus on a couple of things. We're going to focus on what that energy source is. So what do we use as energy when we are active? We're going to talk about the 3 energy pathways. In other words, the 3 different ways in which we make that energy. And then applications in bioenergetics is a fancy way of saying, how do we take this information and apply it when it comes to exercise, activity? What does it mean for us in everyday life? I think that's the really practical, relevant piece of this that I think will be very, very useful for you guys. All right, Jenny, let's get started. Tell us about what that energy source is.
All right. So quiz and test taking purposes, you do need to know ATP, or adenosine triphosphate, is the body's energy source. It's a very specific molecule that our body can use to break up. It either breaks it apart to release energy, or it puts it back together to store energy. Every single one of us has some in our body. We can make more. That's a good thing. Okay. But that's what we're going to be talking about. That's the specific molecule we're talking about when we're talking about energy. Now, keep in mind, guys, we need energy for everything, right? Don't just think about the exercise that you're about to do or jogging to the mailbox, right? Yeah, that requires energy. But you guys just sitting here listening, breathing, your brain is functioning, your blood is flowing, your heart is pumping. that also requires energy. So even when we're at rest, unless you're dead, you still need energy, right? But the more energy you need, the faster your body needs to be able to produce it. That's what we're talking about today. Okay. Now, to really help you guys understand this molecule, again, for quiz and test taking purposes, ATP, adenosine triphosphate, the body's energy source. But on this next slide, I want to show you guys what it looks like. Those of you guys who are in nutrition, we talked about this, but I want to explain why this molecule or how it stores energy. Hopefully this will make it click a little bit. Okay. There's the molecule itself, right? And then there's 3 little green phosphates. I call them tennis balls for simplicity. Okay. Now those green tennis balls, they can be broken off. They can be removed from that molecule. And when we break the bonds between those little tennis balls, we are releasing energy to be used for work. Okay. But we can also recreate this molecule and stick that tennis ball or tennis balls back onto this molecule. And when we recreate the bonds between those green phosphates, we are storing energy. Does this make sense, you guys? The energy is stored in the bonds between those phosphate groups. Okay, this is a big part of understanding how this molecule gives us energy and how we can store it. Awesome. Thank you, Sandra, for the thumbs up. I love a good emoji, guys. I love a good emoji. Okay, so yes, we are releasing energy by breaking the bonds through different processes. The processes are what we're about to talk about. Okay, so hopefully that gives you a little bit of visual on how this works. All right, what else do we need to know about ATP, John?
All right, a couple of tidbits, and this is good stuff for quiz and test taking purposes. ATP, again, it's adenosine triphosphate. There's limited amounts of it. And when we do activity, our body starts asking for more of it. So then we get into these energy pathways. And these energy pathways are basically the ways in which we biochemically create more ATP for use in activity or exercise, etc. So again, limited amounts. We store a little bit. We'll talk about that here in a second. We store a little bit. We run out. We got to make more. These 3 energy pathways are the ways in which we make more of it. Now, all of this takes place in the mitochondria, which is normal. And it's often known as the powerhouse of the cell. I can guarantee you that's a quiz question. So just know that every time you take physiology, that is a quiz question. Where it basically asks, what's the powerhouse of the cell? The answer, mitochondria. So there's a freebie for you guys. So again, limited amounts. We make more with those 3 energy pathways, and all this is going to take place in the mitochondria. Now, the 3 energy pathways, these are the names. So for quiz and test taking purposes, we definitely need to know the names of them. We'll get into the function of all of them here in a second. But the names, we've got the ATP-CP system, so the adenosine triphosphate, creatine phosphate energy system. We got the glycolytic energy system, and then we have the oxidative energy system. There's a couple of clues in there in terms of some of the tidbits of information that you want to know about each one of them, which we'll get into here in a second. But again, just know that when we are in need of more ATP, we need to make more, we travel down these energy pathways. These are the 3 pathways. These are the names of the 3 pathways that give us that energy. All right. So earlier when I said time to lock in, this next part here, this next slide that Jenny's going to take us through, this is the part where we really need you to lock in. We're going to spend a little time here.
Yes. All right. So for my note takers, this is a slide we're going to be on for a while. If you like the screenshot, this is a great one to do. All right. Now, the 3 energy pathways that John just mentioned, they are listed in that order for a reason. That's the first thing I want to point out. Okay. That's in the order in which they will be recruited. Okay, the order in which we will use them. All right. So the first thing I want to point out, guys, when we need energy, okay, if we need energy right now, in red in the top left, you see stored ATP first. We can store enough ATP in our muscle cells for about 2 or 3 seconds worth of energy. Okay, so we're going to use that first. The ATP that's already stored will break a phosphate off, take that energy and use it to get out of the way, to jump out of the way of that bike, right? Or to turn around real quickly. That's why. Think about the why, right? We need it stored because if something happens and you need to do something real quick, it might be a good idea to have some stored energy. All right. So we're going to use that stored ATP first. Now, when we run out of that stored ATP, we're going to rely on this first energy system. It's called the ATP-CP energy system. The CP, we know what ATP stands for. The CP stands for creatine phosphate. Now, I just said creatine, and a bunch of you guys, your brains probably just lit up. Ooh, creatine. Yes, that creatine. Okay, so if you're supplementing creatine or thinking about it, it would feed into this energy system. So pay attention and see how that goes. Okay, so we're using creatine phosphate, which can donate a tennis ball, a P, back to ADP. So we go from adenosine triphosphate with 3 phosphates. We break one of those off. We only have 2. So in order to get back to ATP, we're now at ADP, diphosphate, 2, right? We need another phosphate from somewhere. We're going to take that phosphate from creatine phosphate to make ATP again. Okay. Before I go any farther, give me a thumbs up. Let me know that this makes sense. Does that make sense? Okay. So when we break off one tennis ball to make energy, awesome, guys. Okay. Creatine phosphate is going to give us its phosphate to make ATP again. Now we're storing energy and recreating that molecule. Awesome. Bunch of emojis. Good, guys. Okay. We're just going to take this one step at a time. Okay. So creatine phosphate donates a phosphate to recreate ATP or store more energy that we can use later. Okay. Now, generally speaking, we can only have enough creatine phosphate. We only store so much, right? So at some point we're going to run out, and it's generally going to help us create energy for anywhere between 0 and 10 seconds. Okay. 0 and 10 seconds. And then we're pretty much going to be out of creatine phosphate. So we don't have any more tennis balls. We run out of tennis balls to help us create ATP. All right. So we're talking about short, high intensity, explosive, powerful movements, right? So an example activity here in the 4th column is a high jump. Or what about a short 100-meter sprint? That's going to be hopefully less than 10 seconds. Okay. What about anything short and explosive, right? A single power clean, a single really heavy deadlift. Okay. It could be anything. Doesn't have to be an exercise even. Anything that you do that's short, powerful, and explosive, lasts less than approximately 10 seconds. We will be getting the energy to do that from the ATP-CP energy pathway. Got it? Okay. And the last thing to know about this for quiz and test taking purposes, the last column there, this is a process that does not require oxygen to occur. All right. That doesn't mean that we're going to hold our breath when we do things like this. Okay. We still need to breathe. We still need oxygen for other things. But this actual process of taking the tennis ball from creatine phosphate and putting it onto ADP to make ATP, that process doesn't require oxygen. So it is what we call anaerobic. Okay. It is anaerobic. All right. Now, what happens if your activity or the thing that you're doing lasts for more than about 10 seconds and you run out of creatine phosphate? Okay. Well, you got to keep creating more energy. Okay. So now we're going to move down. Your body will start to rely on the glycolytic energy pathway. Glyco sounds like, it's right there on the screen, guys, but in the chat, glyco sounds like what? What does glyco remind you of? Throw it in the chat for me. Glycogen, glucose, both correct. Absolutely, guys. The root words are the same. That's a great way to remember it. Okay. The glycolytic energy pathway helps you break down glucose to produce more ATP. All right. So now we're using glucose. Glucose comes from which of the macronutrients, guys? Glucose comes from which macronutrient? Is it protein, fat, or carbohydrate? Yeah. Nailed it, Sarah. Yeah. Carbohydrates. Okay. So when you eat carbohydrates, guess what? They get broken down into sugars or glucose, and they feed into this glycolytic energy pathway. That's why carbs are important. That's why when you don't eat carbs, you feel sluggish or tired because you're not able to create energy with the glucose because you don't have any. Does it all make sense? You getting it? Okay. So in this glycolytic energy pathway, we've all been there too. Okay. We're breaking down glucose or sugars to create more ATP. All right. Now this energy system, this can provide us energy for moderate intensity and moderate duration. Okay, so we can do these things a little bit longer and maybe with a little less intensity than we were doing before for anywhere between 10 seconds and about 2 minutes. About 2 minutes. Okay, what happens at the end of the 2 minutes when we run out of glucose that's available, right? Sugars that your body can use for this energy system. Have any of you guys ever felt that burn in your muscle where you can't do one more rep? It burns so bad, I got to stop. Yeah. That is the buildup of lactic acid and hydrogen ions, which are the byproduct of glycolytic energy systems. Okay, so when you feel that, for some people, it might be 30 seconds in, right? For some people, it might take the 2 minutes to get to that point where they feel that burning where, oh my gosh, I can't do not one more. Giovanni said, I need a Rice Krispie. Okay. It might take some people a little bit longer to get to, oh, John, we lost there we go. It might take some people a little bit longer to get to the point where they feel that burn. Well, guess what? The longer it takes you guys, the more efficient that energy system is. So we can absolutely train that energy system. Okay. An example activity, a 400-meter run, which is 1 lap around a track. Okay. Or maybe a full set of an exercise. Say you're doing 15 or 20 reps of something. Generally speaking, you should be able to get that done in less than 2 minutes. This energy system will be breaking down glucose to give you energy for that thing. Okay. Last piece to understand, does it need oxygen or not? It does not. This is also an anaerobic process, meaning this process of breaking down sugars to create energy does not require oxygen. Okay. Are we following? Give me a thumbs up or an emoji in the chat, guys. Let me know we're following here. Sweet. Awesome. Still good. I love it, Jacob. Awesome. Okay. So now what happens, guys, if you are doing something that's going to last more than a few minutes? Well, you still need energy, right? Okay. But the intensity at which you're working, if you're going to do something for more than, say, 2 or 3 minutes, has to be a whole lot lower. Okay. And I'll break that down in a second. Now we're going to rely on our oxidative energy pathway. This pathway, oxy, gives you an idea. It requires oxygen. Now we need oxygen. Okay. So this is also why when we do things, an activity or something that we're doing, you guys, that lasts a longer time, usually we start breathing a little bit differently because we need more oxygen. Okay. Now there's a lot of different steps in the oxidative pathway. There's the Krebs cycle, the electron transport chain. We have to turn things into a molecule called pyruvate. Do you need to know all these things? Not for this, not to get certified as a personal trainer. Okay. Maybe in some other system you might. Okay. But do you need to know that? No. What you do need to understand is there's a lot of steps that our food has to go through. All 3 macronutrients, protein, carbs, and fat, can be broken down in the oxidative energy pathway and turned into energy. But it's a whole lot of steps to get a whole bunch of energy to do the things that we need to do that last longer than 2 minutes. Okay. It delivers a lot of energy slowly. A lot of energy slowly. Okay. This is for activities lasting, again, greater than 2 minutes when our glycolytic energy pathway runs out. And for example, a 1-mile run or even a half marathon. Okay. Or if you're doing endurance work for resistance training, right? And you're just doing as many reps as possible, you might be super lightweight, but you could do it. Okay. And again, this is an energy system that requires oxygen. Okay. So hopefully, yes, oxygen. Absolutely, Dominic. That's a great way to remember the oxidative energy pathway. Okay. So keep in mind, start back at the top, the ATP CP energy system, short, fast, intense, high intensity activities or movements. Okay. But as we go down the energy systems, the intensity that we're working at has to go down. Okay. And the time that we can do the things gets bigger. Okay. So there's an inverse relationship between duration and intensity. Okay. What that means, can anybody here run their maximum speed for 5 minutes? Right. If you can max out, if your max speed, sprint speed is 13 miles an hour, yeah, I bet you can't do that for 5 minutes. It's physically, yeah, Dominic, no, it's physically impossible. Okay. It's because your body cannot keep up that much energy demand for that long. Okay. So as it moves through the different energy systems, it's naturally going to slow you down and say, hey, we can't give you that much energy that quickly. You need to slow down. Your intensity comes down, but eventually you'll get to a point where you can just sustain that pace. That's how you know you're in that oxidative energy pathway. Okay. Now, John's going to break this down we're going to talk about this a couple different ways, you guys, to make sure it sinks in for everybody. John, anything else that you want to go over with this?
Sure. I mean, the same stuff, but I'll just say it in a different way, and hopefully it kind of helps to sink in. Sometimes I like to talk about these energy systems like you're kind of switching gears, right? And like Jenny was kind of explaining, they're all always working all the time. So they're all delivering energy, or at least they're trying to deliver energy to whatever activity we're doing. But the intensity of the activity is going to dictate, well, how fast we need that energy. And that dictates which energy system is going to be best equipped in order to give it to us. And just standing here right now, and if I walk out of the house, start going for a walk, I'm in the oxidative energy system, the aerobic energy system. It's the low end. I'm not trying really hard to do this. It's not physically taxing on me to do this. But if I go out of the house and then I switch gears and I start sprinting, that means I'm asking for a whole lot more energy, and I'm asking for it right now. The ATP CP system will have to kick in and give me that energy. But like Jenny said, we can't sprint for 5 minutes straight. There's a reason why we can only sprint for 5 seconds, 10 seconds. And once we start to get beyond 10 seconds, you still might be running as fast as you are capable of in that moment, but you're not at your top speed anymore. You're probably not at that top speed anymore. There's some elite people out there that maybe they're close, but for the rest of us normal people, you're not at that top speed. So you shift gears, you sprint, you're in the ATP CP energy system. Then after those 10 seconds run out, if you still continue to try to run, you will still keep running. But like I said, you're going to slow down. And now you're going to switch gears again, and it'll become more glycolytic. And the key word that I said there was it'll become more glycolytic. Where all of these energy systems are working all the time, but which one is dominant is going to be dictated again by the intensity, the activity, and the length of the activity. So again, I do my sprint, and then I shift gears, and now I'm more glycolytic. And if I keep running and running and running, I get past that 2-minute mark, 3-minute mark, 10-minute mark, I will definitely have slowed down from that sprint that I started off with, and I'll shift gears again back to oxidative. And again, the main difference there is oxidative. It can give me a ton of energy, unlike ATP CP. It can only give me energy for like 10 seconds. Oxidative can give me a ton of energy, but there's a lot of hoops to jump through. There's all these steps that it has to go through. That Krebs cycle, the electron transport chain, it goes through a bunch of steps in order to deliver that energy. So it delivers it slowly. So it cannot give energy to activities that need energy right now, like a sprint, but it can give you energy for hours of running at a moderate pace. So again, think of it that way. Now, when you're thinking about these things, think about exercise programming. Think about the activities you do. Think about the sports you've played. Think about the needs of those sports. And now think about, did you train the right way for those sports? Did your coaches have you do all kinds of crazy stuff because they didn't know about this stuff? And a lot of high school coaches are just someone who was nice enough to coach, so it's not their fault. But I can think back to playing like basketball, and there was times where we'd go out and we'd have to run for like an hour. And I don't know if that actually helped us. It's good to be able to run for a while, but running slow for an hour is not necessarily something that you ever do when you're playing basketball. So think about these things. Think about how they apply to activities. Think about sports. And that's how you choose the intensity and the way in which you go about programming for people.
Nice. Yes. So guys, there's a couple great questions in the chat here. First, Isis asked, do all these energy systems work together, or is it like a domino effect? This is a great question. And John just mentioned it too. They all work at the same time. So in every single one of us right now, all three of these energy systems are giving us energy. Okay. Just a little bit for some of them. Okay. But what we're doing and how intense we are doing that activity, right? So the time that we're doing it and the intensity that we're working at will determine which of these energy systems is dominating energy production. Okay. Which one is the main system giving us energy? Okay. So they're all working at the same time, but there's certain factors that will tell us which one is dominating energy production. Parker had a similar question. Can some people's oxidative systems work faster than others? Yes. Okay, so that's where John was going when he was talking about think about the sports that you do or the activities that you do on a regular basis. We're going to have to think about the things that our clients do, because when we exercise or do activity, you guys, we are using these energy systems, right? But when we're doing deliberate exercise, meaning repeated, whether it's repetitions or rounds of something, we're training these energy systems. So you can train these energy systems to become more efficient. Okay. So if you have somebody who's a runner or does a lot of endurance things that last longer than 2 minutes, chances are you want to spend a good amount, not all, but a good amount of your time training that oxidative energy system. So what does that mean when you're in the gym? You probably want to do things that are similar to the activities that they do. So if they're a runner, guess what, guys? At some point, you're going to have to run. Okay. Doing biceps curls doesn't make you better at running. At some point, you're going to have to run and, of course, learn the mechanics of running to be the most efficient you can. Okay. But you're probably going to have to do things that last longer than 2 minutes to train that energy system, which means short sprints, right? Wind sprints and treadmill sprints and pushing the sled for 100 or for 20 yards. That's not going to help somebody who wants to improve their oxidative capacity. Does that make sense? Okay. Now, what if you have a power lifter, right? Or somebody who loves to max out, or a football player, right? An O lineman, for example, who's pushing other people, right? Think of the demands of that position, pushing other people for 4 or 5 seconds, and then they're done. That's the ATP CP energy system that they're using primarily for that activity. Well, you better be training that, right? So that means when you pick exercises, you're going to pick probably higher loads, faster speeds, lower repetitions, right? Things that last less than 10 seconds to challenge and train that ATP CP energy system and make it more efficient. Okay. Okay. Arm wrestling. Get out of here, Lincoln. I know that's a sport now, though. All right. So these are the things we're thinking about. This is why we need to know this information. All right. Now, the last thing I want to say real quick before John takes over again. Think of a time. I'm going to tell you a time when you've experienced your body moving through all 3 of these energy systems and you just didn't know what it was. Okay. Think of the last time you went to the gym to do cardio, any type of cardio. Let's say it was like a deliberate cardio machine. Okay. You hopped on the treadmill, the elliptical, the Stairmaster, whatever. Okay. You first got on, you were turning on the buttons and stuff. You were fine, right? Oh, I'm okay. Putting my headphones in, getting set up. For after about a minute or so, your legs are burning. You're like, oh my God, what have I done? This is how I die. Ugh, why am I doing this? Right? Next thing you know, your breath starts getting heavier. You start to get a little hot. You start to sweat. And then all of a sudden you feel like, oh, I can do this forever. I'm fine. Let's go. Has anybody else ever experienced that before? You don't do cardio. It does not kill gains, by the way. It's just a matter of how much you do. Okay. So a bunch of you guys have experienced this before. Okay. So a bunch of you guys have experienced this before. You're fine. All of a sudden it burns like crazy. And then after that, you're like, oh, I'm fine. But all of a sudden you're hot, you're sweating, and you're breathing a little heavier. That was your body literally transitioning through all 3 energy systems. You just didn't know what it was. Now you do. You're welcome. You're never going to think about it differently now. Okay. That's exactly what you experienced, you guys. John, what you got?
Yeah, so usually we get questions about, is this what energy system does this use, or what energy system does this sport use? And most sports and most activities will use them all. It's just which one is dominant, right? Like you need to be in pretty good oxidative or aerobic shape to play football, but most plays in football only last a few seconds. So you want a lot of your training to dominate explosiveness for those 3 or 4 seconds. Whereas other sports like mixed sports, basketball and soccer, there's going to be a lot of jogging, but then sprint and jump. So you want to have kind of a little bit of a mix to your training, but not necessarily running for an hour like I did when I played high school basketball. So this is just to say that our athletes need us, guys. Even for me, I went to a major Division I college. I ran track there, and I don't think our program got as much attention as some of the other sports. So I feel like we did kind of a watered down football program for weight training as part of the track team, because there was definitely a lot of bench press and incline bench press and all that other stuff. And I don't know if that helped me with my 200 is what I'm saying. So for strength conditioning for athletes, we want to make sure that we're training them in the right way, and understanding these energy systems is a very good start in terms of choosing the right intensity and the right types of exercise for our clients.
Absolutely. So hopefully this makes all of what we just talked about, all 3 of these energy systems, a whole lot easier to understand versus trying to read it from your book and try and figure it out. All right. It's not super complicated, or it's not as complicated as we like to make it, but it applies to exercise, right? It helps inform how we put together an exercise program for somebody, or the things that we'd want to focus on for that person in their exercise program to support the things that they do in real life. Okay, that's exactly what we're doing. So if you never thought about this with your own exercise, let's start thinking about it. Okay, start implementing this into what you do when you go to the gym, right? What kind of activities do you normally do? What are the energy demands and the time lengths that you do with your activities? Make sure your training is appropriate for that. Okay, there was a question too about rest, how much rest is needed. You asked specifically for the glycolytic energy pathway. This is a great point. Okay, we need rest intervals between sets of exercise, for example, if you're doing shoulder press or whatever it is, we need to rest between those. It's not to fix your hair and pick your nose and like wipe your face off, right? It's to allow your energy systems to recover. Okay. And we have a little assignment that we're going to give you later so that you can try it. Okay. Now, we can't give you a specific number, how long it takes your glycolytic energy system to recover. You know why? Because it depends on the person, right? What if you're doing something that you've never done before? Okay. You get that real bad burn. You're like, oh, I can't do one more rep. And we say, all right, rest for 2 minutes. And then you go back to it and you struggle through that next set. You get halfway through what you're trying to do and you can't finish it. What does that tell you? You didn't rest long enough. So maybe you needed 3 minutes. Maybe you needed 5 minutes. We don't know. But if your energy system is really efficient, say you train it on a regular basis, you may only need 45 seconds before you can go into your next set of whatever it is and utilize that same energy pathway and be just fine. Does this make sense, you guys? It depends on the training or the conditioning of that person. And it depends on what you're doing. Okay. It depends on what you're doing. So there's no hard and fast answer. We give you general guidelines as far as the variables go for rest based on what you're trying to accomplish, hypertrophy or strength or power, etc. But those are just guidelines, because the bottom line is if you start your next set and you struggle through it, it means you didn't rest long enough. So you have to pay attention to that and possibly give yourself more rest. Okay.
And I got one more example for you, and then I think we may have to move on. Yeah. So a lot of people get into cardio, like they do a lot of slow cardio, running on the treadmill, be on elliptical. It's just slow, right? When you're doing something for 30 or 45 minutes, it's slow. And we've all been there, right? But a lot of people don't do a lot of high-end cardio, sprint, like high intensity cardio. So they do all this slow cardio and feel like they're quote unquote in shape, but then they decide to go play some pickup basketball or a soccer game, whatever the case may be, and they're out of breath instantly. And that's because those sports require sprinting, right? You got to pick up the pace. There's going to be high intensity, and your efficiency in those energy systems is probably tanked because you don't train them. So it makes sense, if you want to be kind of a well-rounded athlete, to make sure that all of those energy systems are getting some attention. And depending on what your favorite things to do or whatever sports you play, the energy system that needs the most attention is going to be dictated by just that, what you like to do or whatever sport you like to play.
Yeah. So really good questions, you guys. Really, really good questions. All right, John, what are some other things that they should think about when it comes to the energy systems? Oh, you beat us to it, Ashtad. Here we go.
So don't forget about lactic acid. And Jenny kind of covered it already. In the glycolytic energy system, lactic acid is one of the byproducts. You feel all that burning. And sometimes, back to that example of how much rest you need to take. Sometimes when you're working in that glycolytic energy system, you're feeling that burn. Sometimes you want to take minimal rest because you want to keep pushing that burn in order to kind of expand your lactic acid threshold, so your ability to cope with it. In other cases, you may take a longer rest because you want to have a good, strong set again. So again, within the same energy system, it could depend with how much rest you want to take, depending on what the goal actually is. And then as far as muscle fiber types, yeah, they're definitely going to play a role. Type 1 muscle fibers have a lot more oxidative capacity. So therefore, they're very useful to the oxidative energy system. Type 2 muscle fibers are the fast twitch. They're very low oxidative capacity. Again, if we were trying to figure out, which muscles are going to be kind of mapped to a specific energy system, that's kind of how we look at it. The slow twitch are going to be more for the slow energy system, and the fast twitch are going to be more for the fast energy system. So it's a really good question there. And that is more or less how it works. Now, depending on the person, some people have more fast twitch than others. Some people have more slow twitch than others. My understanding is that most people are pretty close to 50-50. But then when you get to the elite sprinters or the elite marathoners, you start to see some differentiation in muscle fiber type and the concentration of either type 1 or type 2. So again, don't forget lactic acid. It's all good. Don't worry about it. If there's a little burning there, that's okay. The muscles are burning, totally okay. If your joints are hurting while you're exercising, problem. But if the muscles are feeling some burning, that probably means that you're working hard and you're doing some of the right things.
Absolutely. There's a question for you about muscle fibers in the chat there, John. And while you're reading that, guys, one thing I want to point out about lactic acid, John just pointed it out too. That burning sensation, I think we've all felt it before. You have to remember for some of your clients that you're going to have, especially if they are new to exercise, when they experience that burning, we know it's normal, but they may not think so. I've had people who have experienced that and thought something was wrong. Okay, so we have to help people understand that it might burn a little bit. Explain to them, you can explain to them what it is if you really want to bore them with the details, but help them understand that that is normal. Okay, and the more they exercise, the less they'll have of that, or it'll go away a little bit. Okay, but it is normal and it's expected. So we don't want to, some people who ask, how do we get rid of that? You don't want to get rid of that. It's there on purpose, right? It's generally when you get to that point where the muscle is burning so much, what happens? You have to stop. You physically have to stop. Right? It's on purpose. It's a protective mechanism for our body to allow it to clear out the byproducts of metabolism. That's all. Right? So it's there for a reason. We don't want to ignore it. And we don't, well, in some cases, maybe you do if you're training for endurance, but we don't want to get rid of it. That's not the point. Does that make sense?
And as far as a couple of the questions here in the chat, I think what we're asking is, can we convert some muscles to more fast twitch or convert some to slow twitch? And my understanding is that there is some of that possible. But here's the thing, like in order for your body to get to the point where it has to convert muscle fibers into more fast twitch muscle fibers, you kind of have to have maxed out your potential. So that's first things first, is train your body to be as explosive as possible in whatever lift or sport or whatever the case may be. And then there could be some conversion. My understanding is it's not a ton, and it's probably not the defining factor as to whether or not you actually become faster or have greater endurance. It's going to be the training that you do and the care that you take of your body that's going to maximize all this. Because energy is one thing. Let's not forget about all the parts. If your muscles and joints and everything are not in good shape, meaning you don't move well, the muscles are like the mechanical parts of your body are not doing well, then it doesn't matter how much energy you have. It's like having like super energy in a car, but all the wheels are out of alignment. So that's going to be play a role in your ability to do exercise and sports as well.
Yeah, great point. The last thing I'll say about that, you guys, there's a lot of examples of that. So changing muscle fibers from one type to the other, to John's point, it takes extremes for that to happen in our body. And by the way, it doesn't happen overnight by any stretch of the imagination. It happens over time. But again, with maxing out your performance, right? And unless you're an elite level athlete, most people are not maxing out their performance. Okay. And genetically, John mentioned that most people are about 50-50 as far as the type of fiber that they have in their bodies. Genetically, that can change that percentage. Okay, some people are genetically more type 2 fibers than type 1. Those people are going to be really good sprinters, for example, especially when they train for it. John was a runner, he can tell you. But there's some people out there, guys, who maybe genetically have more type 1 fibers, those slow twitch fibers, who will, no matter how much they train, will never really be as fast as the best sprinters out there, or they'll never be good sprinters just because physically they don't have the right type of muscle fibers. Does that make sense? Okay. So there are limits to our potential as far as what our genetics have given us and what muscle fiber types we have and can use. All right. So just keep that in mind. All right. A quick review of the energy systems. Okay. Quick review. Great page to screenshot here. The ATP CP energy system is our short-term energy system, 0 to 10 seconds for quiz and test taking purposes. Okay. High intensity activity, short duration, and it is anaerobic, meaning it does not require oxygen. Glycolytic energy pathway is our second energy system that our body will tap into when activity goes beyond 10 seconds to about 2 minutes. Moderate duration, moderate intensity, and anaerobic as well, does not require oxygen, and it utilizes glycogen. Glycolytic, glycogen, they sound similar. Then we have our oxidative energy pathway. This one gives us energy for a long, long time, but there's a lot of different steps. So it takes a little bit of time to create all that energy. It gives it to us very, very slowly. And this is an aerobic process, meaning it requires oxygen for those steps to occur. Okay, so those are the three. That's the short breakdown. Okay, awesome. And you can find this in your workbook if you want some practice with it, page 41 and 44. And in your textbook, the physical textbook and the downloadable textbook, okay, it's page 188 to 193. where we discuss the energy systems. All right, 188 to 193. Now, to help you guys understand, we have some completely optional homework for you guys. John, break it down for these guys.
Yeah, like it says there right at the top, completely optional, by the way. Number one, we put identify your personal Einstein window. Since we talked about it a little bit earlier, it's a good thing to understand about yourself when you are at your best. This could be when you're at your best for your workouts, like Jenny was saying, but also when you are at your best for studying. If I study late at night, forget about it. It's like I didn't study. So I know that I'm better in the first half of the day. Now, the second part of this homework is about the energy system. So you're going to want to choose a form of exercise that you can do separately for 10 seconds, 60 seconds, and 3 minutes. So 3 different intervals. And in each case, try to give a maximum effort relative to the time interval. So 10 seconds, that's like your top speed. 60 seconds, it's whatever your top speed is for 60 seconds. So it's definitely going to be slower. And then the same thing for 3 minutes. So the maximum effort relative to the time interval. And then between that one, take 10 seconds and then do it again. So what you would do is do a 10-second sprint, rest for 10 seconds, and then do another 10-second sprint. With the 60-second one, you're going to do the 60-second interval, rest for 10 seconds, and then try to do another 60-second interval. And a couple examples, we got the bike, stationary bike, treadmill sprint, rower, jump rope. And then just answer the following questions for each interval. How did you feel during the second attempt of the exercise? Meaning, how did it go? Were you able to perform the second one as well or near as well as the first one? And then the second question is, how can you use your knowledge of the energy systems to explain how you felt? There were questions earlier about rest periods and that sort of thing. And those are the sorts of things you should be thinking about when kind of assessing how this homework goes for you. So again, totally optional, but this is a way to kind of experience the energy systems and really help yourself to understand the amount of rest necessary in order to kind of replenish yourself and do well if you were going to do another set within that energy system.
Yes. So super cool little self-experiment that you guys can try. Try to do it before Friday if you can, because we'll ask you about it on Friday and see if anybody did it and what your feedback was for it. Because it's interesting. It's interesting to feel it. Like that example I gave you guys of like when you go and start your cardio, you feel like you're going to die and then all of a sudden you feel fine. That's what you're experiencing. So it's cool to kind of feel it and push it a little bit. And it's interesting to know. All right. So great job, you guys. That's really the big stuff we wanted to cover today. A couple of reminders for you. Remember, all sessions are recorded. I'm going to break down where you can find them real quick. In your course, in that menu on the left, there is a link for the CPT Bootcamp. Click on that, okay? Within 20 or 48 hours, so by Friday, you guys should see the second week video pop up. First week should already be there for you. You'll see the boot camps at the top of the page, guys. Scroll down a little bit and you will see the office hours. Last week's office hours for week 1 should already be posted, and this week's we'll post by Monday for you guys down there as well. You can go back and rewatch these as much as your heart desires. Even after you pass your exam, they will be there for you if you choose to go back to them. Okay. Otherwise, we'll see you guys on Friday, same bat time, same bat channel. Bring your questions. You guys are going to email tomorrow with a link to join us and a small little link. Check the email to send in your questions ahead of time. Okay, just to send it ahead of time. Gene, I see your question about how many hours or minutes you need to spend in the gym. We're going to talk about that on Friday. That's a good question, and there's no one answer to that, so that's a good thing. But we'll talk about that a little bit on Friday for you. All right, awesome, guys. John, any last words for this crew today?
Yeah, good job today. Hopefully, this information we were able to take some sciencey stuff and make it relevant. Try out the homework and let us know how it goes on Friday.
Perfect. Awesome, guys. We'll see you on Friday.
Bye, everybody.